World Storytelling Cafe, and it is Friday. Therefore, it is our stories for children of all ages from 0 to 100, or 110 for those, especially that have been taking the long life cabbages. And our teller tonight is none other than the amazing, the fantastic, the phenomenal Michael Kerins. Over to you, Michael.
Thank you, John. I always want to ask you to do that again because it's always so lovely and diffusive. I want to start with a riddle. If you give me a drink, you'll definitely kill me. But if you feed me, I'll get bigger and bigger and bigger. Big question, what am I? Give me a drink and I will die. Give me some food and I'll get bigger. A story, and we'll come back to the riddle. The story I'm going to tell you is about a wee boy called Wee Tom, who's just a little tiny boy about the size of a thumb. Can you show me your thumb, Louis? Your Majesty King Louis, please, if you'll be so kind. John, about that size. And his name is Thomas Patrick James O'Neill. That was his granny, Mrs. O'Neill. She died. Thomas Patrick James O'Neill, Thumb. And in lots of stories, this wee boy is called Tom Thumb. If we were French, we would call him Tom Pouce. If we were Ukrainian or Russian, we would call him Malchik Spalchik. If we were Germans, we would refer to this character as Daumling. But I'm Scottish, and he's small, so I call him Wee Tom. And he is wee. And in every Wee Tom story you get Uncle Dan, who is like me. He's magnificent. He's muscly like this. Boom. And his heart goes, boom, 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 for love of Wee Tom. Wee Tom's favourite colour is red, which is why I always wear something red, like my socks, when I'm telling Wee Tom stories. And this story, Wee Tom is excited about going on holiday to the seaside. They play a kind of travelling bingo where Wee Tom stands on the table of at the train on the window and looks out. And Uncle Dan has a pen and a paper, and they write down all the different kind of farm things that they see. Animals and machinery. Tractor, write down a tractor, Did you write it? And look, it's red. Red's Wee Tom's favourite colour. It's a red tractor. I should get double points for that, he said. So Uncle Dan wrote down tractor, red tractor. And the train went along. Sheep, sheep, sheep. And Uncle Dan said, there's 147 of them, but you're not getting 147 points. Uncle Dan, can you count so quickly? There's 147 sheep in that field. Oh, I said, yes, that's quite easy. But how do you manage it just as we whizzed by? 147 sheep. Oh, that was easy, he said. You just count the legs and divide by 4. And into the next field. And that was lying fallow. The grass was flat. Nothing was there. The farmer was giving that area of land a rest, and there was nothing could be done. They had cows. And at one point, as they went over a bridge down low, they saw a farmyard, a house, and everything was there. There were stables for horses, and one horse could be seen just a bit, but still, Uncle Dan said, well, a horse's head is a horse, so let's have that. And there was a sheepdog, 2 of them actually, quite an adult one and quite a big pup. There was chickens, there was goats, quite a lot of goats. And as they got closer and closer to where they were going for their holidays, Uncle Dan counted up that they had seen 71 different things associated with farms, farmyards, and farm machinery equipment. Then Uncle Dan, with the two hands, slapped his eyes and said, "Oh no, I'm certain I've forgotten your bed. I don't have a wee Tom, wee size, wee bed for you to sleep in. I'm certain of it, I'm certain of it, I'm certain of it. I can see it. It's your own bed is on the table in the kitchen, not packed away." Well, wee Tom said, "Well, what am I going to do?" Uncle Dan said, "Well, we'll figure out something. But first of all, when we get to the house that we've rented, I'll make sure about the bed." They got off the train. Wee Tom said, "Can we just look now? I just need to know." "No, no, no. We're not looking here. We'll get to the house that we've rented this house, and we'll unpack properly. And if it's there, it's there. If it's not there, there's nothing we can do about it. We're not going back to Glasgow to get this bed. Something else will happen." When they got to the boarding house, where the house that they had rented, they went up to the room. Uncle Dan put wee Tom on the table, and then on his own bed, he started to empty the suitcases. It was a suitcase and a rucksack, and sure enough, in both bags, there was no bed for wee Tom. "What am I going to do? Where am I going to sleep? What am I going to do? Where am I going to sleep?" Uncle Dan said, "We'll go to the shops tomorrow, and I'll get a bed for you." "But they don't have wee Tom-sized things here, Uncle Dan, and I'm not sleeping in some piece of doll's furniture. I'm not a toy, and I'm not sleeping on a toy bed." "You won't be sleeping in a toy bed. I'll make a proper bed for you." And then he put his hand across his chest and said, "I promise." And promise is what he did. And then the uncle said, "But let's get something to eat. We'll go to the beach. We'll have a look around, and we'll see what's what." And Uncle Dan put wee Tom in his pocket up here high like this, and off they went. It was a lovely day, warm evening, and they walked along and they saw the Red Parrot Cafe. Now, red is wee Tom's favourite colour, as you know, and the cafe was just closing, and they said, Uncle Dan said, "We'll go in there tomorrow after I've made a bed for you." The first night sleeping for wee Tom was quite difficult. Uncle Dan got a box and put it there for wee Tom to sleep in, but it wasn't suitable at all. He got some ordinary sized sheets that were far too big, an ordinary sized pillow that was far too big. And he said to wee Tom, "Why don't you just sleep in an ordinary bed? There's a bed there in the next room." And wee Tom tried the bed, but the bed was too long. King Louis, show me a bed that's too long." The bed was too wide. "Show me a bed that's too wide." The bed was too high. He said, "The bed, Uncle Dan, this bed is too long, it's too wide, it's too high. I can't cope with this." But he was tired and he fell asleep. And Uncle Dan had to think about it. And he said, well, about 10 o'clock that night, he said, "I'm going to bed, but I'll prepare the breakfast things for the morning." "There you go," he said. "Breakfast cereal. This cornflakes packet. This will be an ideal bed for wee Tom. I'll take out the inside bag, the poke of cornflakes, and that can be for you, for wee Tom." And that's what he did. Uncle Dan checked in on wee Tom in the next room. He was fast asleep in the ordinary person's bed and said, "Yeah, this is cool. I like this. I'm happy, I'm comfortable, and I'm glad." Uncle Dan went to bed, and in the morning when he woke up, wee Tom was already awake, and he was walking in the bed, and he was walking kind of higgledy-piggledy, down this way, down that way, up this way, down that way. The bed was too spongy. It was too long. It was too wide. It was too high. It was too deep. It was just wrong for a boy the size of my father's thumb. Okay. Uncle Dan picked wee Tom up and put him on the table. And he said, "Look, I've got this box that will be an ideal bed for you, the cornflakes packet. And he lifted out the inside pack of the cornflakes and said to wee Tom, in you go. And he put wee Tom in the box. And it was scary as scary could be. He was actually rather frightened when he saw it. And he said, Uncle Dan, I don't like it in here, Uncle. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I'm choking. I'm choking. Help me, Uncle Dan. Help me, help me, help me. I can't breathe. I started coughing like this. Uncle Dan said, don't be coughing like that, darling boy. Up you come. And he lifted wee Tom down. He said, what's the problem? He said, that box is too wide, it's too high, it's too deep, and the stuff, there's all kinds of orange dust and powder and crumbs and everything in there. And Uncle Dan said, don't worry about that. I'll cut it to size. It'll be long enough, it'll be wide enough, it'll be deep enough. I'll get the vacuum cleaner and I'll hoover out all the crumbs and dust and powder. I don't like that box, Uncle Dan. I don't want it to be that box. I need it to be a proper box. A box like just for me. A box just for you? Then what could it possibly be? Uncle Dan made a portion of the cornflakes for wee Tom's breakfast in his own little bowl, in his own little cup for orange juice. He gave him his own spoon to eat the cornflakes with, and he started to mush them up. And Uncle Dan was making eggs and toast. And as he was putting the margarine stuff, this kind of butter substitute, onto the toast, he said, this container will be good. I like this. And he tried it. And it was quite lovely. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, this is lovely. This box will be ideal for wee Tom. And he scraped all of the butter, margarine substitute stuff out onto a saucer. 7 scrapes it took to get it completely empty. And then he washed it and dried it and washed it and dried it and washed it and dried it. And then he said, that's just quite lovely. And then they gave it to wee Tom. And wee Tom went into this box. And then he started to slip and slide and slide and slide. And then he said, I'm sinking. I'm sinking. Uncle Dan, I'm sinking. His right legs went to the right. His left legs went to the left. And slowly and slowly and slowly, he started to slide down the container. Uncle Dan said, what's happening? He said, Uncle Dan, this is too dangerous. I don't like this. I'm rather scared in here. I'm going to slip. Do you remember downhill all the way? Do you remember downhill all the way when I was skiing and I broke my leg? I'm going to break my leg in this slidey margarine box. I don't want this. Uncle Dan said, don't worry about it. I'll get some sandpaper and I'll rough it up and crumple it up and square it up. Uncle Dan, I don't like this margarine tub, and I'm not keen to have it. Oh, well. What do you want to do then? He said, well, what I want to do is I want to not have this margarine tub, and I don't want to have the cornflakes packet. I need a different container that I'll be quite comfortable in. And Uncle Dan said, well, let's make your breakfast and we'll decide once you finish your cornflakes and you have your eggs and toast, what we're going to do. We'll go down to the beach. We'll go to the cafe for our lunch and we'll see what's what. They ate the breakfast. Wee Tom got his sunscreen on, every part of his head, inside the folds of his ears, round his neck, round the back of his neck there, on his body, space between his fingers, the creases of his elbows, all his whole chest, back, everywhere, all covered And they went down to the beach. And there was a big sign. Grand Sandcastle Competition. Application by entry only. £5. Five's wee Tom's favourite number because he's got 5 names. Thomas, Patrick, James, O'Neill, that was his granny's name, Mrs. O'Neill, Thumb. So that was it. They were all ready. Wee Tom said, I want to join this competition. And Uncle Dan said, well, we'll get the forum, we'll pay the £5 and we'll see what's happening. But we're not coming back to the beach once we go home the holidays. So it has to be, the competition has to be during the span of time that we are on holiday here. Well, it turned out that it was every single Thursday of the holiday season, there was a separate sandcastle competition. So that was fine. There would definitely be one for them to be there. So they had a look around here and they had a look around there. And they went up to this beach hut where they rent out deck chairs and all that kind of stuff for the beach. And they got the forum. And the forum had quite a lot of rules, including things like only one entry per person and or per team. So one person can enter the competition, or one team can enter the competition, but they can only enter it once. There was lots of rules. I'll tell you the rules another time. Anyway, they then went, it was lunchtime, and they went into the Red Parrot Cafe, and standing outside was the lumpy woman. Now, the lumpy woman is a person who's very, very lumpy, and every part of her's lumpy. And she was standing outside, her arms were folded, her leg was crossed one over the other, and she was just, as she saw wee Tom and Uncle Dan coming, in the middle of blowing a big bubble gum like this. She's trying to stop smoking, and this is special chewing gum to help people stop smoking. And she said the best idea to stop smoking is not to start it at all. And there she is chewing this. And she said, as she popped the gum, hello, boys. Nice to see you back. Have you had a busy year? Oh, well, they had a busy year. In that year, wee Tom had caught bank robbers. In that year, wee Tom had stopped the circus going on fire. In that year, well, wee Tom had been to Buckingham Palace. Lots of adventures. And she said, upstairs or downstairs? Well, it was lunchtime and the place was busy. And Uncle Dan said, well, we like to be upstairs. There's 3 windows, 3 walls of windows upstairs. And she said, it's very busy up there. You'll be lucky if you can get a table. You'll need to share. 2 windows overlooked the harbour and the river, and they loved that. The boys loved that. Both Uncle Dan and wee Tom loved looking at all the different boats, swans, seagulls fighting, tourists feeding them breadcrumbs and bread. Shouldn't really feed seagulls bread, apparently, but anyway, people do that. All this stuff's all going on. And then the other side overlooked the park, the gardens. And there was an archery competition going on of people firing bows and arrows. And wee Tom was interested in this as well. But they couldn't find a table. And then suddenly there was a family of 4 just going away. And Uncle Dan said, quick, we'll grab this place. And it was at the corner of the 2 glass walls that overlooked the river. And they were busy looking in there when the waitress came up and said, okay, I'm here for you. I'm ready for you. I'm certain for you. And they looked in. And everybody looked in. And they came to see wee Tom because he's quite an unusual person to see. And they saw this one and that one and that one and this one. And then they said to wee Tom, are you the wee guy that caught the bank robbers? Oh, they had a talk about this. Oh, are you the wee guy that stopped the circus going on fire? Oh, they had a talk about this. And Uncle Dan said, we just like a wee bit of quiet time and a wee bit of privacy so that we can get ourselves settled. Sure. And they went away. And the waitress came up and said, well, boys, lovely to see you back. What would you like? And she had her pen and she had her notepad, and she started to write down sausage, egg, beans, chips. That was for Uncle Dan. And wee Tom wanted sausage. He said, that'll do me because I'll get some of Uncle Dan's chips. I can't eat so many chips as that. So that's what they had. And then Uncle Dan had tea, and wee Tom had orange juice and an apple. He likes fresh fruit. I like fresh fruit as well. So that all went on according to plan, and everything was all settled. Sausage, egg, beans, chips, sausage for wee Tom, tea, orange juice, and an apple. And she brought the things over. And at the end of the table, at the other end of the table where they were sitting, the family that was up there, it was a shared table, the family had to move away. And wee Tom went right over to the end of the table there. And from there, he could see down into the kitchen. And in the kitchen, he could see the chef and the kitchen people and the people washing the dishes and the waiters collecting the warm food to serve it up, and somebody preparing food, somebody cooking food. And then he saw the chef making an omelette. And all the egg mix was in the frying pan, and he was just at that part where he started to strike a match and turn on the gas. When wee Tom said, that matchbox could be a good, that matchbox will be a good bed for me. Uncle Dan, I think a matchbox would be useful for my bed. So Uncle Dan said, let's have a look. When the lumpy woman, the waitress, came up, and everything about her was lumpy. I'm telling you, boys and girls, she had lumpy bingo wings, but even had a lumpy boys. She had a lumpy jewellery. She had a lumpy watch. She had lumpy rings. She had lumpy feet and lumpy shoes. She had a lumpy body, and she had lumpy hair. And she was so kind. She was just a big lump of kindness. She was just lovely. And she said, what is it you would like? Because I've taken your order and here it is. Sausage, egg, beans, chips, sausage for wee Tom, tea, orange juice and an apple. And you want something else? And Uncle Dan said, yeah, we would like a matchbox. Could you ask the chef if... Absolutely no smoking. Not allowed smoking. No, Uncle Dan said, I don't smoke. Of course I don't smoke. I hate smoking. Uncle Dan said, I would like the matchbox to see if we could use this as a wee bed for wee Tom, as a temporary bed while he's here on holiday. I'll see what we can do, she said. So she put down the food and they started to eat their lunch. And while they were eating their lunch, she came back to say that the chef had 2 matchboxes open at the same time. And what he was going to do was put all of the matches from one box into the other so that that matchbox was empty and they could have it. Wee Tom was so happy. Uncle Dan measured like this. I think this matchbox is long enough. Measured like this. I think this matchbox is wide enough. And the matchbox came up and wee Tom stood inside it, almost like a sentry in a sentry box at Buckingham Palace the day he was there, inside this little box. He said, Uncle Dan, yeah, I like this. This bed is long enough, it's wide enough and everything. And Uncle Dan said, yeah, but don't lie down in it because I think there could be a few splinters of wood in there, what we call skelfs, what other people call spills. They're quite jaggy, so please don't be leaning on the splinters. And on the way home, they went into the hardware shop and they got some sandpaper, and they sandpapered and sandpapered and sandpapered. And it was really just rather lovely. I said, you know, that's really special. I like that. I like it a lot. Why don't you do it? So Uncle Dan let wee Tom lie down in the box on the table, flat on his back. I said, Uncle Dan, This is good. And he started to knock. It's not very comfortable. And Uncle Dan got some cotton wool and he squished it, 5 layers of cotton wool. The first layer was to make that matchbox as comfortable as possible, as warm as toast, as safe as houses, as spoily, if that's even a word, as spoily as possible. And the 5th, because we Tom likes things in 5s, the 5th layer was to make it as luxurious as Hollywood, some kind of fancy hotel. Oh, as comfortable as possible, as warm as toast, as safe as houses, as spoily as can be, as luxurious in Hollywood. And we Tom lay back like this, and 5 layers of cotton wool. And then he started to rub his head. Oh, he's got a sore neck in this bed. Uncle Dan, I could get a sore neck in this bed. I need a pillow. Uncle Dan said, I've got a pillow right here. And he went over beside the kettle. There were 3 containers. One with the letter C for coffee, one with the letter T for tea, and one with the letter S for sugar. And he picked up the T for tea, and inside it was sugar. It wasn't tea that was in the sugar in the tea container. It was sugar. So then he picked up the sugar container, and guess what? It wasn't sugar. It was in there. It was coffee, and he didn't until he went into the 3rd container, and there, in the container marked C for coffee, that's where the tea bags were. And he said to me, Tom, this little tea bag will be your pillow. And he gave it to me, Tom, to put his head down like that, and he leant back. Oh, it's lovely. And then me Tom's nose started to twitch. Oh, what a smell. That's horrible, Uncle Dan. This is the finest quality tea bags. Beautiful tea bags. Uncle Dan, they are very good tea bags, but they are horrible, horrible, horrible pillows. No thanks. Uncle Dan said, yeah, but it fits perfectly. But it smells horrible. So Uncle Dan took this little tea bag, this little square of tea bag like this, and then he shook all the tea until the tea went down to the bottom in a kind of black triangle. And then, with a big pair of scissors, he snipped off the corner of the tea bag and emptied all the tea, and wee Tom ran underneath it. And all this black, powdery, rainy, dusty stuff fell on him and made his nose itchy, and made him sneeze, and made him sneeze, and made him sneeze. Uncle Dan said, get out of the way, that's really foolish, don't do that again. And then Uncle Dan gently blew the tea bag, and then using the scissors as a kind of pair of tweezers, he picked up the cotton wool and stuffed it inside the pillow, and stuffed it 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 until it was filled to the brim with lovely cotton wool. And then Uncle Dan got a needle, and then he started to put some thread through it, and then he very carefully started to sew up the tea bag. And he put the tea bag behind wee Tom's head. And it was just lovely. The bed was long enough. The bed was wide enough. The bed was deep enough. There was 5 layers of very, very, very comfortable cotton wool. Cotton wool that was as comfortable as possible. It was warm as toast. It was safe as houses. It was as spoiler can be. And that mattress, that 5 layers of cotton wool mattress, was as luxurious as Hollywood. There was a pillow that was stuffed full of the same cotton wool inside the skin of a tea bag. And Uncle Dan had sewn it all very closely. And then, finally, wee Tom started to rub his body and said, "Oh, Uncle Dan, I'm cold lying here. How could I ever sleep the night if I don't have a cover for my body?" Uncle Dan got super absorbent, extra economy value kitchen paper, kitchen roll. And he folded it and 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 folded it until it was just the right size for the bed. And then he blew it. And all the layers opened. And filled with air. And he put this inside a little red pouch made of red velvet. And when it was in there and it was all fluffy, like a wonderful quilt, red's wee Tom's favourite colour, and by the way, remember that. Uncle Dan got the needle and thread, and he learned to sew in the army. And he sewed and 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 sewed until this perfect little bed cover was there. And then he tucked it under wee Tom's chin. And he said to wee Tom, "Now, you've got a bed that's long enough. You've got a bed that's wide enough. You've got a bed that's deep enough. You've got 5 layers of mattress made of the most exquisite cotton wool that's as comfortable as possible, as warm as toast, as safe as houses, as spoiler can be, and as luxurious as Hollywood. This is a mattress for a little boy. And your pillow filled with the same lovely stuff. And your bed cover. What do you think of your bed cover? Inside a red velvet pouch." I asked you a question. What do you think of your bed and your mattress and your pillow and your cover? And you asked the question again. 4 times. The 5th time he asked that question, he said, "Wee Tom, are you listening to me?" And then he saw wee Tom's tongue. And he listened very carefully, and he heard, wee Tom was fast asleep. And you know, wee Tom had a dream. And another day and another time, and maybe when I'm in Holland, Korobeni Kovas, maybe when I'm in Holland, I'll tell that story. But I'm not telling it today, for that's another story for another time. That's the end of wee Tom and the new bed. So I was asking, welcome Igor. I was asking a question, a little riddle. Okay? And here's the riddle. If you give me a drink, I will die. If you give me food, I'll get bigger and stronger. What am I? Arisha, if you give me a drink, I will die. If you gave me something to drink, I would die.
Fire.
What?
Fire.
A fire? Хорошо, мальчика.
Девочка.
Что он сказал?
Хорошо,
A
девочка.
devoshka. I know it's devoshka. I'm only joking her. Well done. Did you get the
Wow.
answer, John? It's a fire.
Cool. Ариша, молодец.
Smart kid. Did she get help?
No. I didn't guess Igor either. So she guessed herself.
Good stuff. Well, I'll give you another question. I'll give you another riddle, and then we'll tell another story. This is something that starts with an E, the letter E. It finishes with a letter E, and it's only got one letter in it. The first letter is an E, the last letter is an E, and it only contains one letter. What is it?
Ай, так пишется.
Is
I.
that Agatha?
Yes, this is Agatha.
Amazing. Amazing. So, the next story.
Is it an I?
Oh, that's a good guess. Not the right guess, but a good guess. The next story.
Envelope?
What?
An envelope.
Well done.
My goodness, I've got
Envelope.
I never get riddles.
You never get riddles.
No.
I love it. I could listen to riddles, I think, all day and all night. I'm not very good at guessing them either, John. So the point is, Arisha, that you have a letter like this. Like this. You have a letter like this, and you put it inside an envelope. The word envelope starts with the letter E, it finishes with the letter E, and there's a different kind of letter inside it. Got it? Cool. So the beginning of that story you Korobenikovs missed was the wee Tom going to the beach for his holidays, and his uncle found out that there was a sandcastle competition on at the beach. So they said, well, Uncle Dan said, I think we should enter the sandcastle competition, but there's quite a lot of rules, and we're going to have to be really careful because we don't want to be disqualified. One of the things that they said was they want there to be as much recycling of beach rubbish. Anybody who uses litter from the beach will get extra points. Only one entrant per person or per team. Nobody can be into. Somebody who was married to a millionaire. No, her father was a millionaire. This child, her father was a millionaire. He cheated the competition. That he had 17 members of staff, all building sandcastles. And that girl won the third prize, she won the second prize, and she won the top prize. And that was, everybody agreed that wasn't fair. So now it's only one entry per person or per team. Uncle Dan and wee Tom entered the competition. Oh, and you have to be there at the time of judging. Quite a lot of rules. You can't be in a cafe or you can't be in a hotel. You have to be at your work, ready for the judging. The competition. Well, Uncle Dan started going about the beach before they even decided where they were going to build the castle, looking for all kinds of rubbish. And he found quite a lot of pipes, of gutters and stuff like that, lying that had been washed ashore. They found ice lolly sticks. They found the little orange nets that you can buy fruit in, like tangerines and oranges and lemons and so on. They found crisp paper packets. They found sweetie wrappers, ice lolly packaging. They found egg boxes, plastic ones. They found all kinds of stuff. And once Uncle Dan started to gather all these things, he thought, this is the stuff that's going to get us extra points. But we're also going to find natural stuff as well. They found seaweed, they found seashells, they found sea glass, and then they picked their spot on the beach. And it was slightly on a little rise, but it was a good spot. And then Uncle Dan started to build the main part of the castle. And he built it not with 4 walls, but with 5, because 5's wee Tom's favourite number, and he built a pentagon-shaped castle, flat, sides, and up. And a pentagon-shaped castle, well, it was the only one on the beach. And then they built 5 little tubs beside it. And then they got the the plastic egg container, and they started to stipple the walls. And then the plastic pipe that Uncle Dan found, he built this around the 5 sides, and it became a perfect pipe for a moat. And Uncle Dan got water. And this time, when he put the water into the moat of the castle, it did not drain away. Everybody else's castles were empty moats, but their castle was absolutely full. They got seashells. They got seashells that were fan-shaped, scallops. They got razor shells. They got cockles and mussels. They got all these just lovely little things. And then Uncle Dan built a drawbridge of ice lolly sticks that he put 2 this way and 2 this way and 2 this way and 2 this way, until he had a little mesh of network of these popsicle sticks. And he said, well, this is going to be ideal to be a little bridge across the moat. Now, they only had enough sticks to build 1 bridge, but there were 5 walls that were the same kind of thing. But Uncle Dan said, no, we'll have 2 bridges, one at kind of the front and one underground one at the back. Not really so much a bridge as a tunnel. And that tunnel was to be covered with one of the big clamshells on the outside and one of the big clamshells on the inside. Suddenly, up high, there was a voice like this: "Judging will begin in 2 hours. Judging will begin in 2 hours." Well, they were a bit scared and a bit nervous and a bit worried about that. We need to get cracking with this. And they started to design the walls. Uncle Dan got some of the extra sticks they had. They didn't have enough for another bridge, as I said, but they had enough to build little flagpoles with crisp papers like this on it. And the flags could flutter on the turrets of the castles, on all 5 turrets. And then in the middle, they built a little place that would have been kind of like where a king would live or whatever. And they built that there. And then Uncle Dan, using his fingers as scoops, started to scoop out 2 little sentry boxes beside the drawbridge. And then they got the sea glass and they started to stud it around. The hardest sea glass to get is the red stuff. Red's wee Tom's favourite colour, as you know, which is why I always wear red things when I'm telling wee Tom stories. So with that happening, Uncle Dan said, we'll put the red on the very front here. And then with this little net on a twig, we'll roll up the net for the oranges and make it kind of like a drawbridge, not a drawbridge, a portcullis that goes up, down, up, halfway, 3/4, back up, and we can wind it. Judging will begin in 1 hour. And suddenly they were really in a panic. Uncle Dan said, I have to get water into this thing. So he said to wee Tom, you just keep what you're doing. Keep decorating. Keep everything going. I'm going to get the water. And they got the bucket and they filled up the water. And filled up the water. And then he found this kind of big container, this big plastic container of, had been for something like oil or something that a cook had used on a ship and just thrown overboard and polluted the ocean. Uncle Dan was able to take that out and fill it with seawater and use that to fill up his moat. The portcullis worked. The drawbridge worked. The flags were flattened. Judging will begin in 15 minutes. And it went on like this. And they got more and more and more organized. And then, well, then it was time for the judging. Five, wee Tom's favourite number. 4, 3, 2, 1. Stop building. Everybody stop building. Stewards are coming around. And the stewards started to go around to make sure that nobody was cheating or getting extra time while the judges were there. Now, the judge was the woman who was married to the mayor of the town. And she had a fur coat and a golden chain and a big hat. And it was a hot day. And she had a long, long lead and a tiny little dog. And she said, "Oh my, how cute. Oh, how lovely. Oh, gorgeous. Oh, 7 points, 12 points, 5 extra points. This is very clever." And then she came to the next one. And she said the same kind of things, kind of political wives things. "Oh, how smart. Oh, how clever. Oh, how pretty. 12 points, 8 points, 6 points. Oh, I like this. Oh, this is a good idea," she said, not saying what the good idea was because she's the wife of a politician. And she just said all this stuff. Blah, 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 blah. And that was that. And again, and again. And she came round closer and closer and closer to Uncle Dan and wee Tom. And as she came there with this long lead and this little dog and this big fur coat and a hat and golden chains and everything, just as she was about to say it, the steward said, "Disqualified, disqualified, disqualified." Uncle Dan said, "Why are we disqualified?" And the steward said, "Here on the notepad, it says number of competitors, 2. 2 competitors. Only you. You're the only one here." And Uncle Dan said, "But my nephew is here. Wee Tom. My nephew is here. He was here a moment ago. He was putting glass, sea glass." And Uncle Dan was stuck for words. He was trying to say he's putting sea glass onto the sentry walls. He's putting the sea glass onto the sentry walls of the sentry boxes here. And just when the man was about to say disqualified and sign that they had been sacked from the competition, wee Tom jumped out from behind the thing and said, "Surprise! I've been here all along. I was hiding in the secret tunnel that takes you from here, inside the castle, to here, outside the castle, and back again, outside the castle, inside the castle." And the woman said, "I think this is the only castle we've seen that's 5-sided, wee Tom's favourite number. I think this is the only castle we've seen that's recycled piping that we found on the beach. I think this is the only castle that's recycled the little fruit nets you get for buying oranges and lemons and so on. And this is definitely the only castle I've ever seen that had a secret passage from inside the castle to outside the castle. Maximum points, 100. I don't need to see any more. The winner." And wee Tom and Uncle Dan were so happy. And a man came from the newspapers like this and took the picture, and they won £50. And one day, if you see me in Holland, Arisha, you can say to me, "Michael, what will happen? What happened to that £50 that wee Tom and Uncle Dan won from the sandcastle competition?" And I'll tell you a brand new story because I haven't decided what they did with that money. That's another adventure for another time. that's the end of Wee Tom and the sandcastle competition.
That was amazing. In fact, they were both amazing. Now tell me,
Mostly
are
improvised.
those stories in any of your books?
Wee Tom and the New Bed is available in a book called Wee Tom and the New Bed, believe it or not. And Wee Tom and the Sandcastle competition is from my head.
It's from your head.
Mhm.
So people can purchase Wee Tom and the New Bed.
They can purchase Wee Tom and the New Bed, Wee Tom and the Bank Robbers, Wee Tom and there's 3 of them. I can't remember. Wee Tom and the Wee Tom Harates Me Birthday. That's the birthday card project.
Perfect.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's pretty cool.
Perfect. Sir King Louis, Mr. President.
Yes.
Do you approve of Michael's stories?
Well, I'm gonna say it's the best stories ever I heard. They're the best stories ever I heard. They're amazing.
Fantastic. You have the seal of approval of Sir Mr. President King Louis Lindsay Timmins. No higher accolade.
No higher accolade than being the best. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, Michael, that was fantastic. Thank you very much.
Let me end on a riddle. Okay. So let me think. Oh, here's a good one. Since we're in Scotland, England, are you in Romania? Sometimes you are, and we've got Russians in Holland at the moment. A question: what goes all around the world, but pretty much it's always stuck in the corner? All around the world, but it never leaves the corner, really.
So what is stuck in the corner
Yep, what's stuck in the corner.
and never leaves the corner, right?
Yep.
That goes all around the world.
It can go anywhere in the world.
Мама, что?
Maybe dust.
Сам угол.
And Arisha tells the corner itself.
Corner itself's a good one. По-русски поштамарки, a postage stamp.
Oh, yes.
Aha. Oh, wow.
Stamp.
You see, these now we will be trying to tell these in 30 years' time, and there'll be no letters, no postage stamps.
And I'll still be telling them. I'll still be telling them if I'm alive. I'll be 101.
Absolutely.
I'll be
But,
101 in 30 years.
The only thing that will come by post are bills. Yes. Well, that's fantastic, Michael. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
What a lovely session.
Great.
And
Thank you,
what have we
Louis.
got coming up? Well, I don't think I had anything in the diary for next week, and I haven't sent Waleed the schedule yet. So Sarah, during that thing I put an appeal out, and Sarah Lloyd Winder will be doing next Fridays.
Good.
The last Friday of the month will be coming live from Glastonbury. So I think there's one more. There's 2 Fridays between.
Well, you'll
now
have
and
Donald Nelson down for that.
yeah, so we'll have a whole group of us in my storytelling tent at the festival,
Marvelous.
and so we'll do a session from there.
Right.
Meanwhile, thank you all for attending. All you out on watching on Facebook Live and YouTube and everywhere else, the hordes, the multitudes. So And what? But those live here, give Michael a lasting and long round of applause. Whoa, whoa,
Thank you,
whoa.
Michael. Always such a pleasure to listen to you. Yeah,
you
the stories
too.
are amazing.
I think you're going to see me in Holland soon, sooner than you think.
I would love to.
I would love it.
Please
I love
come.
you. Bye-bye.
Yes.
Bye, King Louis. Bye,
Bye.
John.
Bye.
Bye, Corabelli.
Bye,
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 Arisha.
bye, you
Bye,
go.
World Storytelling Cafe. Thank you, Walid. Bye-bye.
And thank you as always, Waleed, for flying the magic carpet.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.